to Bringing Social Business to Your School, a webinar brought to you by the Global Business School Network. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the GBSN, we are a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C., with a global mission to build management education capacity for the developing world. We work with our business school members to improve management education with the goal of building the strength of the pool of managers available to build capacity and drive economic growth in developing countries. We have over, and this map is a little out of date, we actually have 57 member schools to date. They are leading schools from around the world that share our commitment to building management education for developing countries. As part of our network, we foster networking, we do cross-border collaboration, we have an annual conference that I'll talk about in a moment, webinars such as this, panel discussions, working groups, and we foster peer mentoring, all with the goal of helping to improve the capacity of business schools in developing countries to teach entrepreneurship, management, and leadership. Our conference coming up this year, we're very excited to be presenting Education, Employment, and Entrepreneurship in Tunisia, June 10th through 12th. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email us or check out the website at gbsnonline.org/2013. And on top of this being our annual conference, we're excited to be celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. So we hope that any of you who have an interest in this topic or just interested in learning more about GBSN will think about joining us in Tunisia. So with that, I want to introduce to you today our presenter. His name is Leonard Nima, and he's the head of academia at the Grameen Creative Lab. He is responsible for all university collaborations of the Grameen Creative Lab in order to establish social business within the academic world and to build up a strong network of universities in the field of social business. He's been involved in establishing collaborations with universities in Japan, Singapore, Canada, the US, Italy, Brazil, Turkey, and Germany, amongst many others. He's joining us today from Munich, and we look forward to hearing his perspective on how social business can be incorporated into the academic environment. So Leonard, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for GBSN for giving us the opportunity to host this webinar about how to bring social business to your school. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. As you said, there are many different countries where we've been doing projects so far and where we brought social business to. And I think it's very exciting for us and for me personally to host this webinar today and to tell you more about, since we have a quite diverse range of participants from all around the world as well. I just saw the participant list, and it's very exciting to see that we have people from the US, from New Zealand, from Russia, from South Africa. So it's getting a global thing, and there is definitely a global interest in the topic. In today's webinar, I'll talk about these things. First of all, I would give you a brief introduction about social business. So what is it actually what we're talking about? Then I'll give you a brief introduction, what are we actually doing at the Grameen Creative Lab? And then more specifically, I will talk about our university activities. And lastly, I'll show you some of our best practice examples from the before mentioned collaborations from Japan, from Brazil, and so on, to give you a little bit more of a feeling what have we actually done so far. Finally, as Paige said, you have the opportunity for questions, and we'll spend a good amount of time on Q&A, because I think it's quite important to get your feedback as well and to get a feeling, how do you want to get involved? Are you already involved in that topic? What are your next steps, and so on? So thank you very much for joining this webinar today, and looking forward to your questions at the end. So basically, when we talk about social business, we always refer to social business
not to interrupt you. Unfortunately, we don't yet see your screen. I do need you to click on show my screen. It should be sort of a play button next on the control panel, as we don't see the presentation yet.
You see it now?
Nope, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You didn't miss any slides so far. So basically, the first slide's coming up now. When we talk about social business, we always refer to social business as defined by Professor Mohammed Yunus. As most of you might know and might have heard about Professor Yunus, he is not only the founder of Grameen Bank, but he also is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. He received the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2006 for his work with Grameen Bank. He's kind of the initiator of the idea of social business, and he's also the founder and co-founder of the Grameen Creative Lab. Just a brief history about his work. He studied economics in Bangladesh, but then moved to the US and got his PhD at Vanderbilt. I'm saying this because I think we have somebody from Vanderbilt University on this webinar as well today. So he was in the US, but after the Liberation War and the liberation of Bangladesh, he moved back to Bangladesh and he became a professor at Chittagong University. He got involved into identifying roots and causes of poverty, and whenever he came out of his classroom, he saw like a very difficult situation for the people right in his neighborhood. Bangladesh got hit hard in 1974 by a famine, and he just wanted to find ways to help people. So he started a project together with his students where they went out to a nearby village and they were just about to identify what do people actually need in order to step out of poverty. And they talked to women who were producing bamboo products, and they were just trying to figure out what do you actually need in order to get this first step out of poverty. And at the end of their little research activity, they came up with a list, and they had 42 names on the list, and in total, these 42 women needed $27. So he was really surprised and somehow shocked as well to see that with such a small amount, he can actually help those women. So this is how Grameen Bank project started, which actually in 1983 became a fully fledged bank, Grameen Bank. Grameen Bank nowadays, they have around 8.4 million borrowers only in Bangladesh. 90% of them are women, so they have a strong focus on women because they just figured out this was a lot more efficient and a lot more effective. Women were taking good care of the money, were taking good care of the family, and they were repaying in a very good way, having high repayment rates of around 97%. Today, they have given out more than 13 billion US dollars in terms of microloans to women in Bangladesh. But we don't want to talk too much about Grameen Bank. As I said, it started in Bangladesh and is only operating as a bank in Bangladesh. But Professor Yunus created a lot more organizations. Basically, he started with a very pragmatic approach. Whenever he saw a social problem, he was thinking about ideas how to solve this problem and how to address this problem in a business way in most of the cases. Some of these organizations are NGOs, but many of these organizations were started as sustainable, financially self-sustainable solutions. So it's not only about Grameen Bank, but we say Grameen is a family of social businesses. So when we talk about social business, what do we actually mean? In one sentence, and Wikipedia has this one sentence, a social business is a no loss, no dividend company with the only purpose of solving a social problem. So that is point number one to a social business. It is about solving social problems first. But that's not all. It says no loss, no dividend company. So it is a bit more specific. Professor Yunus defined this in what he called the 7 principles of social business. So principle number one, and that's what I just said before, it is about addressing social problems. So this is the first business objective. So we are trying to tackle any of the social problems out there. It's not only about poverty, but it can be in the areas of environmental problems, in healthcare, technology access, education. So wherever you see a social problem, you can think about a social business solution. What is specific about it? We try to do it in a financially and economically self-sustainable way. So that is one point which clearly distinguishes a social business from an NGO. Most NGOs, or like all of the NGOs, depend on donations, and this is one of the big challenges. So they always have to find new ways to get new funding on and on, and they spend significant amount of time and resources on getting funding. So we try to come up with self-sustainable solutions. That means that a social business is trying to cover its costs by generating revenues through selling products and services, basically. In a social business, of course, you can have investors. Investors can invest their money, and they will be able to get their money back in the medium term and long term, of course, if the social business is profitable and generates enough cash and profits to pay back the initial investment. But one important point, and this is one important point which distinguishes social business from other related concepts, investors are able to get their investment amount back, but once this has been repaid, all other profits will remain within the social business in order to further address the social problem. Principle number five, a social business should be environmentally conscious. That is kind of the bottom line with everything what we do. We try to be environmentally conscious. Number six is that workforce gets market wages with better working conditions. So people always say, okay, when I work for a social business, I have to make a living myself. That's where we clearly agree. Yes, of course. It wouldn't be a self-sustainable solution if people do not get market wages and have good working conditions. And number seven, I think this is one of the most important principles where we always say to do it with joy, because we believe it's fundamentally important to have joy in what you're doing, like to enjoy your work. Only then you will be able to really address these kind of devastating social problems out there. So yeah, this is quite important. Here's a slightly different overview, kind of pointing out that we try to combine the best of both worlds, let's say it this way. On the one hand, we have the NGOs, which are trying, or not only trying, but which are providing good social and ecological value, and which are trying to maximize this value. But as I said before, they are based on donations. On the other hand, we have the traditional businesses, which are self-sustainable. So we combine these two and bring them together in the social business. When we talk about defining the spectrum, so that was just to give you a brief introduction what we actually mean with social business. As many of you might know, there are lots of different terms out there. So we have social business, we have social enterprise, social venture, CSR, social innovation. We'll not go too much into detail about the differences and so on, but just to say that we have this one specific concept with the 7 principles defined. There are many different ones out there, and one thing that I would like to point out is that we, of course, do not say, oh, social business is the one and only solution. It is one additional tool, and that's how we see it. It's an additional tool to address a specific kind of social problems. So let me talk a little bit about the Grameen Creative Lab and what we do here. The Grameen Creative Lab, as I said, has been founded and co-founded by Professor Yunus back in 2009. We are a small company based in Germany, but we have lots of different projects going on all over the world, in Haiti, in Colombia, with our sister organizations in Brazil, in India, and so on. When we talk about our work, first of all, I would say the Grameen Creative Lab, we're trying to spread the idea of social business. This is very broad and not very precise, so we try to further break it down into 3 pillars. Pillar number 1 is that we say we interact. So it's a lot about spreading the word, something like this webinar today to explain, talk about the idea, and we organize lots of different events like the Global Social Business Summit. We have the European Social Business Forum here in Germany coming up next week. We had lots of different regional summits in Bahrain, in India, in Russia, and so on. So it's a lot about interacting, talking about the idea, and what's kind of interesting for us is wherever we talk about it, we always have people who come up afterwards and say, oh, I didn't know about this. This is interesting. So this still shows us that it's quite important to go out there and spread the word. But I think just talking about it, of course, doesn't solve any problem. So we said pillar number 2 is what we call incubate. So this is kind of the next step to make it more profound and to really try to implement ideas. So when we talk about incubation, this is of course where the universities play a big role, because we try to implement the idea within universities that's not just a one-time activity, a one-time event, and so on, but that students can actually learn about it through master programs, etc. And I'll talk, of course, a lot more about this in a second. The ultimate goal, I would say, is of course to create social impact, and social impact we only create when we have actual social businesses on the ground, which are there to solve social problems. So this is pillar number 3. We try to create these social businesses, and we have set up several social business joint ventures with large corporations. There is the first one, Grameen, some of you might know, producing fortified yogurt to fight malnutrition in Bangladesh. We have been working with companies such as Veolia, such as Japanese companies, Uniqlo, but we also try to create small social businesses. So it's not only about big corporations getting involved, but it's really important that we have the entrepreneurs who are starting something either straight out of university or after a few years of working in a different company, corporation, whatsoever. So basically, we've done a lot of different activities in this field. One brief example is a joint venture with BASF, one of the largest chemical companies in the world. Together with them, we created the joint venture BASF Grameen, which is producing mosquito nets in order to tackle the problem of malaria in Bangladesh. One difference here, again, as I said before, difference to an NGO. There are many NGOs out there doing good work also in that field of malaria prevention. But in many cases, they are giving out the mosquito net for free. That helps people, of course, in short term, but you always have to find new funding sources in order to further address the social problem. The difference here in the social business way is that we do not give out these mosquito nets for free, but that they sell them at the cheapest price possible. So they have a factory on the ground in Bangladesh now producing mosquito nets, which then will be sold locally to the people in Bangladesh. A different example of work that we have done is our initiative in Haiti. We've started after the earthquake in 2010. Haiti got hit hard by an earthquake. And of course, you have lots of good initiatives which are coming up, like the immediate disaster relief, which is fundamental and quite important. But at the same time, we've been thinking about what are possible and potential solutions for medium-term and long-term solutions. So we started the YY Haiti initiative and started almost directly after the earthquake to establish a social business fund on the ground. So we now have a team which is working on the ground, trying to identify social business entrepreneurs, trying to support them with funding, with business development services, and so on, in order to create lots of small social businesses in Haiti. And the most recent one has been announced recently together with the Clinton Foundation. There will be a social business addressing the problem of deforestation. Quite exciting project in Haiti coming up. One important thing and one important question which always comes up, because we have lots of examples from Bangladesh and from the developing world. So one of the important questions that always comes up, is it only working in developing countries? And we clearly say no, and we want to show that, of course, there are lots of good social business solutions in, let's say, the developed countries and the developed world. The only main difference is that the type of social problem is different. So we talk about malaria in Bangladesh, but we have social problems in Germany, we have social problems in the US. Let's say it's obesity, the problem of old age, social exclusion, and so on. And this is one of our favorite examples. This is not a GCL, a Grameen Creative Lab project, but one of our close friends has developed Dialogue in the Dark. And it's about providing employment opportunities for blind people, and not just employment opportunities, but also addressing the problem of social exclusion. There are blind people all around the world, and they have started this exhibition project, Dialogue in the Dark. Some of you might know about the Restaurants in the Dark, where you actually have a blind guide guiding you through kind of a museum with different areas which show you and get you into different situations, like daily life situations. You have to walk through a park and so on. It's an absolutely fantastic and unique experience. And this entrepreneur, Andreas Heinecke, has shown that this can be done all over the world. So they have started in Germany, but they are now active in Japan, they are active in South Africa, they have taken it to Brazil. So this is a social business which is going all around the world. Let me talk about our university activities, because I think that is the key question: how to bring social business to your school. So we said that social business education is key to shaping a new mindset which puts society's needs first. So for us, it's really important, as I said before, like within the incubation stage, that we reach young people at kind of an early age, and not to tell them that social business is the one and only choice, but to give them the alternative. Like when I studied economics and business, there was no such thing like social entrepreneurship, social business at our university. So that's what we want to tackle. So we want to put this topic on the agenda so people hear about it, people can get involved into it, and can think about this as an alternative for their, let's say, career path, for their life. So our vision is that we want to bring social business into universities, and that we create this culture within academia, that we have a clear focus on society's most pressing needs. And we try to establish collaborations and partnerships with universities around the world, and basically also we have clustered our activities in 3 pillars. And this, I think, when I go through our activities now, I think this also will kind of answer the question how to bring social business into your school, into your business school, and give you lots of ideas what can be done. So when we talk about our activities, we basically have 3 pillars. We said pillar number 1 is seeding. So these are all activities which are kind of the first starting point. So of course it would be good to have something established like a center or something, but with each and every initiative you have to start small somehow. So this is where we said, okay, this is where we cluster all of our starting activities: speeches, lectures, workshops, and so on. Network is quite important because we want to connect universities all around the globe, and we want to foster exchange because we believe that we do not need to reinvent the wheel all the time. If somebody in Japan is working on something, we need to have this strong exchange of ideas, of knowledge, and so on. Pillar number 3 is what we call consulting and joint initiatives. So we consult universities if they want to start their social business initiative. And maybe one thing to add here, what I forgot to mention before when I talked about the Grameen Creative Lab, we are not an NGO, but we are a social business ourselves. That means we always have to find ways to basically cover our costs. And this is where like the consulting part is important for us. So this is where we operate as any other agency or consultancy. We consult universities who want to start their social business center, who wants to start basically any social business activity. And I'll go a little bit more into detail about these 3 pillars. So when we talk about seeding, I mentioned before that we do speeches, we do lectures, and we have, for example, developed lecture series and modules with topics such as an introduction to social business or financing social business, which we have already taught at one of our partner schools, Hult International Business School. I'll later talk a little bit about that. We have what we call social business labs, which are either 1 or 2 day workshops, and we have done around 70 to 80 social business labs at universities where, first of all, participants learn about the idea of social business, but then in very interactive and creative workshops have to develop their own social business ideas. So we spend a good amount of time on developing concrete business models for specific social problems. When we talk about student initiatives, we have volunteer opportunities, we have idea competitions, we have done field trips, which we organize to our partner organizations in Colombia, in India, in Bangladesh, and so on, so that students can directly see on the ground and get a good feeling on the ground and work on the ground. Finally, within this seeding activity, we called this groundwork. So these are all of the activities which basically help to build up a knowledge base and help develop, like we develop materials such as case studies. We have a social business bibliography. We have developed a student guide on social business, for example. So this is all the activities which help to further spread the idea and which can be distributed to universities all around the world and so on. So I just mentioned the student guide. This is something that will come up and will be published very soon. For us, we always have lots of students who come to us and ask us, hey, can you help me with this idea? I would like to do something. And as I said before, we're quite small companies, so we are somehow limited in our resources. And that's why we came up with the student guide, which is a document which tries to answer and address many of these questions students have. Like, oh, I would like to do something, how can I start? How can I organize a conference, and so on? What are the most important resources out there? So this is something that will help us and, of course, help students to gain more insight and to just get started. And we have lots of initiatives, and I think this is quite interesting as well. When we get back to the question how to bring social business to your school, we really have some good initiatives which have been started by students, where students went to their professors and told them about the idea and kind of persisted, never gave up, and tried to push them. And there's some examples now at a university in Canada where some students are actually pushing forward to have a minor in social business established, so they're making good progress. We have some good examples of students in Singapore who organized public symposia and events and so on. So there is a lot of power that can be used by just providing them some guidance and some ideas. When we talk about network, as I said before, it's quite important to connect all the universities around the world. One thing that we've done is we have established the academia meeting on social business. Once a year in November, we have the Global Social Business Summit, where basically all people from around the world who are active come together to exchange ideas. And we felt that we need to have an extra day just for universities. So we've done that 2 times now. This year we will have the Global Social Business Summit in Kuala Lumpur in November, and the academia meeting will now kind of evolve into a social business research conference. So all of you are invited to come to Kuala Lumpur in November. You'll find all the details on our website, and I think this will be really interesting to connect with other professors and faculty from around the world. Further activities, we are in the process to publish an academia report on social business. There's the first draft here, where we want to really show what's happening out there. Like we're still talking about young idea, young concept, but within the past 3-4 years, so many initiatives have started. So we want to kind of collect all these ideas and initiatives out there and want to publish and just show people the diversity of activities out there. Of course, it's not about quantity, it's about quality activities, but to show people that there's a good amount of quality activities and initiatives out there, I think is quite important. So hopefully we'll have both the student guide and the academia report published within the next month, I guess. You'll find it then on our website as well. Here's a brief overview, and I like this world map because here's a good overview of our partner universities and universities who are involved in the topic of social business. This is not like the full picture. Of course, there are other universities being active in social business. these are just like the ones where we are in constant exchange and contact with. And this world map looked different 2 years ago. There are not so many logos on there, and this will also be our challenge. Like for the next years, let's see how it looks like in 3 years, in 5 years' time. It's getting a lot more colorful, but as you can see, there are still like many blank spots on this world map. So a lot more work to be done. The final pillar is what we call the Consulting and Joint Initiative. And just to give you a brief overview, as I mentioned before, we do strategy consulting. So we have lots of good examples where universities have established social business institutes, social business centers, and we provide them with strategic advice. We do project consulting, so if there are any specific projects they would like to do, such as launching an idea competition, organizing a field trip, we can provide this specific advice and help them with their specific projects. One thing that we've done a few times now is a social business training week, where we are usually on site for 5 days, having lots of different workshop formats with train-the-trainer elements, strategy sessions, and so on, where we try to impart lots of our knowledge, which we gained through the past years, and help the university to kind of develop and develop their own concrete social business activities. Finally, we have several joint initiatives which we started together with universities. So it's not an institute or it's not a center, but it's a joint initiative, such as a GCL at Kyushu University, where we just combined forces and started an initiative that is about promoting social business through many different ways. And just to show you on the next slide, also, I think quite important when the question comes up, how can I get involved? We basically have 3 main areas. So it's about teaching, quite obvious. It's about research, but it's also about practice and practical implementation. So these are the 3 main areas where universities can be involved. And we have this, what we call the modular approach, to say within each of these pillars, there are so many different things a university can do. And what is quite important, there is no one master plan. So it really depends on if a university comes to us, or if somebody comes to us and asks us what is the ideal scenario and the ideal basket of activities, we say it really depends on what the university wants to do. Like one university has a clear focus on research, whereas some others have more of a focus on the practical implementation part. Of course, teaching is at the core, but you can tell that some of these social business initiatives go in one or the other direction. Let me give you some brief examples before we go to the Q&A session. I just mentioned it. We have the joint initiative GCL at Kyushu University in Fukuoka in Japan. We started back in 2010 with a social business training week, so we've been there for 5 days. And then we established the GCL at Kyushu, which is kind of one of a multiplier. And maybe this is something quite important to mention as well. As I said before, we are a small team, so we are really limited in terms of our resources and so on. So this is why we try to establish multiplicators which then operate within their country, within their region, to further take on the task and spread the idea and develop the idea and so on. So we have launched GCL at Kyushu University, and since then, since 2010, they are really the leading initiative in Japan to spread the idea of social business. And they have done many different things within research, teaching, and practice. So they started a lot with basic workshops. I think that was an easy start. They had part-time employees working on this initiative, but after a year, they already had 3 full-time employees. So they started with some workshops. They organized the Social Business Forum Asia in Fukuoka, the photo you can see here, which has now taken place for the 2nd time. They have initiated several joint ventures. They have started social business idea competitions, so they really work with students on very concrete ideas. So they have a broad range of activities. Another one, EBS University here in Germany. It's a private university, and they have established the first social business chair worldwide. So they now have basically two professors who are fully focusing on social business, and they have a clear focus on research. And quite interesting, they have right now a very specific topic, which is dealing with aging societies and aging populations. So they have identified that this is a really big problem, and it will be an even bigger problem in countries like Germany and Japan and so on. So they have now a clear focus. How can we use this potential, which is still out there, and which is on the same hand side, kind of linked to a lot of social problems. Like people age of 65 plus, they kind of feel socially excluded and so on, but they still have lots of skills, capabilities, which they can somehow like provide for solving social problems. So they are looking closely into that topic and trying to come up with executive education and programs where they try to use and harness this knowledge and capabilities out there. Another one, and this is quite interesting because, of course, we have here a business school network, but for us, it's also important not only to be within business schools. So, of course, this is one of the main areas, but we try to have, and we try to cover a diversity of topics. So this is one example with the IED. The Instituto European de Design is one of the leading design schools in Europe. And together with them in 2010, we established the Master in Design for Social Business. So this is a really unique and new program where we combine the design thinking methodologies and design processes and so on, but apply them in a social business context. And we started with a small pilot with just 6 students who studied for 8 months in Milano. They have been on different field trips to Colombia, to India, and so on. And it was really interesting to see this new perspective coming in, these new methodologies coming in. And this is something, as I said, is quite important for us to have a good diversity of topics and a good diversity of different initiatives out there. 2 more examples I'll show you is one is the GCL at NUS, is a collaboration with the National University of Singapore. And as I mentioned before, some have just a very specific focus. And this one is a collaboration with the Entrepreneurship Center at the NUS. So they have a clear focus on incubating social business ideas. So it's not so much about teaching, it's not really about research, but really about how can we actually create social businesses together with students, and how can we actually create social impact out of their ideas. So they have lots of different activities and programs. They provide seed funding, they have mentoring programs, they do what they call social business boot camps, where together with social entrepreneurs, they work on their ideas within specific areas, they work on their marketing problems, on their financing problems, and so on. And as I said, it's all about getting ideas out there and creating social impact. California's, basically 2 more. California State University, back in 2010, they established an Institute for Social Business, which is based, of course, obviously in California. And what's interesting, they have a clear focus on researching, and they have a clear focus on local problems, like what is the situation in California, in rural areas in California, and so on. So this one, they're doing lots of different research activities. They are about to publish a book pretty soon, and definitely quite an interesting program. Lastly, one collaboration which we have with Hult International Business School in London and also San Francisco. Hult International Business School, they launched a Master of Social Entrepreneurship in 2011. So it's not exactly linked to social, not exactly social business. It's not a master in social business, but social entrepreneurship a little bit broader, let's say. But they ask us whether we can help them and develop courses and actually teach on site. So we've been in London in 2011, and we have been both in London and in San Francisco in 2011 and 2012, sorry. And we developed two courses. One was an introduction to social business and social enterprise, and another one was a specific course on financing social business. So that was in total like 40, 50 contact hours, and we had around 40 to 50 students per course. So that was definitely for us also a very interesting experience, and this is something which we will, let's say, now further or try to further spread and bring to other universities and schools as well. So we're talking about with a school in Brazil right now, where we're actually planning to teach and so on. Basically, I think I would like to stop here with the presentation. I think there's lots of different things and many different things that we're doing. So I would just like to see if there are any questions from your end, and be happy to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was a very interesting presentation. The first question we have is coming in from Susan from Ball State University in the United States. Question: for universities such as mine that are facing state budget cuts and reduced discretionary funds, how do we partner or structure these relationships in order to take advantage of all your great programs?
Yeah, that is a good question, because as I said before, our limitation is we're a social business, so we always have to find ways to cover our costs. And we, of course, understand the situation of universities having budget restrictions and so on. So let's say if we have a social business lab as a workshop, there are different ways. Either the university has the budget, of course, that's the easiest solution. Otherwise, we have had solutions where the university was working together with partner organizations to help, like sponsors. And we have many different companies who are actually involved, not only in social business, but also in bringing social business to universities. So the social business chair at Abbott University I was talking about is sponsored by Danone, the yogurt company. Danone is also sponsoring a social business chair at the HEC in Paris. We have other companies who are involved with different universities all around the world, so this could be one option. If we talk about workshops, another option could always be entrance fees, participant fees, of course. So one thing that is important, like for the workshops, we always try not only to target students, but also to bring in business people, representatives from NGOs, to have entrepreneurs, and so on, to not only have a diverse group of participants, and also have this exchange and different perspectives, but this could also be a way to finance your activities. And workshops, of course, you can charge a fee. In the US, you can charge a good fee for some of the workshops. So these are three options how you can finance activities like workshops and so on. And sometimes it's a combination of both. So your university has some budget, has a sponsor, and it's charging some fees. So yeah.
You also
Hope
mentioned
this answers the question.
You also mentioned, Leonard, sometimes access to case studies. You had a bibliography, the upcoming student guide. Is there a cost associated to all these, or do you have any materials that you can access via your website, or is it an open source to all?
Yeah, exactly. Now, these documents are for free and will be for free. This is also the idea of this groundwork activities, that we felt sometimes we are limited with our reach and activities because of this financial situation. So that's why we really thought, okay, we need to develop materials which work as a multiplicator, which we can just spread. Like the student guide, which is hopefully will be published next month. We try to like reach as many students as possible, which could be like 1,000 students, yeah, whatever, like a couple of thousand students all around the world, just by spreading these documents. Same with the case studies and the bibliography. So we try to build up this library and this knowledge base, which we then distribute free of charge, of course.
Wonderful, thank you. And please, we have about 10 minutes left on the webinar. If you have a question, go ahead and send it by chat. We'll try and get as many questions as possible. If we are not able to answer all of them, we will be sending those questions to Leonard directly to answer by email. But please go ahead and send in your questions via chat. The next question comes from Shahida from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. She asks, in South Africa, social business is usually included in the entrepreneurship curriculum. We allow and encourage candidates of entrepreneurship to generate ideas for social business. Is this common? What is your experience in separate modules and or courses in social businesses?
Yeah, very good question. And I think that's quite important. There are many different ways to start. So it's not that you start with a master in social business or something like this. Like when we talk about teaching social business, in many cases it starts as one guest lecture within an existing program. Or it could be step number two, it's one course within an existing program. This is already like the next step. So you have one course on social business within your business and economics program, within your master's, within your MBA program, and so on. So if you say that you have social business incorporated within the entrepreneurship class, I think this is a good starting point. Maybe it could be good to think about step number two. How can we kind of further increase the activities within this field? So if you find, and also I think it's quite important to test out and see if there's any interest out there. I mean, it might be pointless to establish a master in social business if there's no interest among students and so on. So that's why not only for the actual social businesses, but also for our social business academia initiatives, we always say start small, and that's why we have this seeding pillar. So we start small with one lecture, one workshop, a series of workshops, then maybe a course, and like in the medium term, a program on social business or related fields. But this, when we talk about medium term and having these programs, this might take 2 years, 3 years, and so on.
Wonderful. The next question comes from Stephen from Korea. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I was wondering whether you have any projects in Korea. Do you have any initiatives in cooperation with Korean universities? And I'd like to add to that question is, if you don't, or what are some initial first steps a university can take starting small?
Yeah, very good question. We have no official collaboration in Korea right now. We are talking to some companies right now, but I cannot give any details at this stage. So it might be that there's some projects coming up in Korea in the near future. Let's keep our fingers crossed. In terms of universities, usually universities, like we have a first initial contact, which comes sometimes, or like many times, of course, through Professor Yunus, because he's basically touring the world and meeting people all around the world. But also the GCL team, we are all around the world, like giving lectures, speeches at conferences, and so on. This is usually how you have the first contact. And if universities are interested, they are contacting us, and then we just basically giving them an overview about the different activities, as I did today, to give them just some ideas of what they can do. As I said before, there's not this one master plan, and it's not that we tell universities you have to do this and that and that. It's kind of a mutual thing, so we have to see what develops. And sometimes we talk to universities, have good discussions, but they go in a different direction, we go in a different direction, and so on. Sometimes we talk to universities, we have a good mutual understanding and feel that we can further develop ideas, and then we just, based on that, continue to develop ideas and to find ways for, find good ways for collaboration. So yeah, I think this is kind of a starting point as like the webinar today. So whoever is interested, like learning more, exploring more about potential ideas, about potential activities that you can do, of course, feel free to contact us, and then we just start the conversation from there.
And Leonard, can they go ahead and contact you directly?
Yes,
if they're interested?
Sure.
Okay, great. So we will be sharing this presentation. We will be sharing the recorded webinar as well. So you can access it, and you can also share it. It will also be online, so anyone can access it as well as Leonard's contact information if you're interested in engaging or learning more about social business. I'm going to end with one last question, and a few minutes early. And that's, obviously we are the Global Business School Network. We're very interested in networking. Can you talk a little bit more about your platform and opportunities for networking? If a school is just interested in learning more, do they need to be part of your network to attend some of these conferences? Are there opportunities to network as they're growing in this field?
Yeah, thank you for the question. our network is still very informal, so it's not a formalized network yet, unfortunately. We've been talking about this for a couple of months and for the past 2 years. Um, of course, it would be great to have like an organization like GBSN just dedicated on social business. So far, as I said, we have this informal network, but we try to formalize our activities a bit more. With what I mentioned before, we have the academia meeting, we have the academia newsletter, we have the academia report coming up soon. So we try to find different ways to connect universities. And about your question, whether like this is open, yes, of course this is open. For the academia meeting, for example, of course the idea was to bring together universities who are active in the field, but also to open it up for other universities to get a good feeling. So when I just get back to the question from Korea, if you have the chance to come to the Global Social Business Summit in Kuala Lumpur in November this year, and you're able to attend the academia meeting or like then the Social Business Research Conference, you'll get the chance to meet many of the professors and the faculty involved in the field and just to exchange ideas. And I think this was quite important for us, like to be open and to have this open network, because we don't want to limit this. Like we want to reach, in the end, as many universities as possible, because we want to spread the idea as much as possible. And I think some good examples and success stories. We had the first academia meeting back in 2011, and we had a school from Brazil. They have been attending, and 1.5 years later, we're now in the process of establishing a social business center at that school in Sao Paulo. So this was one of the outcomes of the network activities. So, yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I just have one final comment. This comes from Shelley.